Why is it taking so long to believe that if we hurt nature, we hurt ourselves? Davi Kopanawa Yanomami is a Yanomami shaman who has been called the Dalai Lama of the forest. Davi travels internationally explaining the importance of the Amazon forest, referring to it as the lungs of the world. Davi advocates for the Yanomami who have been suffering the impact of climate change and the invasion of garimpeiros, who are illegal gold miners. Davi says that he has met with people who want to listen and learn, but those in power, the authorities and government officials, do not want to listen.
The Yanomami people are an indigenous tribe that inhabits the Venezuelan-Brazilian border of the Amazon rainforest. Their population is around 32,000, and they are one of the largest indigenous tribes in the world. They are a semi-nomadic people who lives in communal houses.
The focus of our project is what harms the Yanomami people are currently facing. Roughly 32,000 people of the Yanomami tribe are being solely alienated from their land due to deforestation and illegal mining. The Yanomami people are also facing disease, and the women of the tribe are facing sexual exploitation. Their harmony with nature and their overall community is being threatened by these impacts.
Central capabilities act as a basic requirement for one to live a dignified life. An important part of life is having security regarding the things that you value most. For the Yanomami, security in the central capabilities allows them to do things that truly bring value to their lives, which is to protect and be in a symbiotic relationship with the forest. The Yanomami are facing numerous threats to multiple interconnected capabilities, including sense, imagination, and thought, and relationships to other species. The Yanomami care about the forest because it is the most central thing to their identity. For them, taking away the forest takes away their ability to live a fulfilled life and maintain autonomy, but it also takes away the reason that they exist. Their religious and spiritual values are tied to a symbiotic relationship with the forest. Additionally, there is value to the Yanomami acting as the keepers of the forest to ensure that the future generations can do the same. Therefore, reduction in their capabilities raises concerns about the value of living life without that which is most important.
Harms against the Yanomami are founded in fundamental disrespect of the tribe and are all interconnected. The garimpeiros participating in illegal mining has led to deforestation of the Amazonian region that the Yanomami people occupy. Illegal mining has also led to various diseases within the Yanomami population. Therefore, illegal mining is a harm in and of itself, but it also has caused other harms within the Yanomami community.
The first harm that we look at is illegal mining and deforestation and how it threatens the central capabilities. Starting in the 1980s, Brazilian miners invaded the Yanomami's territory, an action that was allowed by the Brazilian government. State and private mining companies mine illegally in the region. As a result of this mining, deforestation threatens most of the central capabilities outlined by Nussbaum. The tribe derives much of their personal conception of dignity and personhood from the spiritual and physical connection to the forest, and therefore with separation from the forest, they are not able to achieve most of the central capabilities. The Yanomami have reported that they are losing their sense of tradition and culture due to the forest having both intrinsic value and instrumental value. As for intrinsic, their capability of sense, imagination, and thought is directly tied to their spiritual relationship with the forest. The instrumental value, also known as the practical value of the forest, threatens their capability of life. The Yanomami people see themselves as protectors of their region of the Amazon rainforest. The environment has suffered due to mining and deforestation impacts. This has a strong impact on the Yanomami because the forest has a spiritual value from which they derive their value for life. Even when deforestation occurs outside of their territory, the Yanomami are still negatively impacted. This has led to a lack of animal and plant resources, limited water supply, and changed the flow of the rivers, which serve as avenues of transportation. It has been said that the only inheritance the Yanomami dream of leaving to their children is the habitable forest. This is a quote from Sister Mwangi. She has been a missionary in Brazil since 1996. Throughout her years being a missionary, she has many conversations with the Yanomami people and has discovered the deep connection that they share with the land.
Another harm the Yanomami people face is disease. Illegal mining has caused mercury contamination in the rivers, since mercury is deposited when the rock that contains the gold is set aflame. Mercury is a neurotoxin that causes nerve damage and developmental issues in children. The mercury in the water also kills the fish, which the Yanomami people rely on as their main source of protein. This has caused food insecurity in the Yanomami population, which has led to other health issues since food is a social determinant of health. The Yanomami people are also contracting malaria from stagnant water craters that originate from mining. This is a breeding ground for mosquitoes, which has led to the higher transition rate of malaria in the population. The third harm the Yanomami people are facing is the sexual exploitation of women in the tribe. Women in the Yanomami tribe are being sexually exploited both by men in the Yanomami tribe and by the illegal miners coming into the tribe. The Garimpiros offer women in the tribe rum in exchange for sex. And the Yanomami men view abusing their wives physically and sexually as a part of a ritual, and they view this as okay in their culture. Women tend to seek refuge and consultation in others' company, and they share their misery with their peers. The sexual exploitation of women is related to body integrity, which is essential capability.
To conclude, the invaders of the Yanomami's land are preventing the Yanomami people from using the land to fulfill their capabilities. Regardless of how outsiders understand the Yanomami's relationship with the land, the Yanomami's perspective is what matters most.
In February 2024, a group of carnival dancers from one of Brazil's samba schools, which are Afro-Brazilian dancing, marching, and drumming clubs that perform in large squares, and 13 Yanomami paid tribute to the Yanomami and put pressure on the Brazilian government to end illegal mining. Their performance reached 70,000 attendees and millions more on television. Davi Kopanawa, a Yanomami leader who advised the samba school on the carnival, said, quote, "Ours is a cry for help from Brazil and the world in general. My hope is that the world, upon hearing our call, will put pressure on the Brazilian government to remove all the miners, destroyers of our Mother Earth, who are soiling the water and killing fish," end quote. The impacts and call for change that Kopanawa is talking about are just pieces of the overall social structures that are harming the Yanomami. We will first break down the concept of a social structure and then introduce elements that are specific to the Yanomami.
People are the most important part of social structures. The social structures are composed of and reinforced by the people involved. People involved includes victims, people in power, and other parties who may be more passively involved. For example, some of the parties involved in the Yanomami's harm include the Yanomami, the Brazilian government, and the Garimpiros. We define social structures as durable systems that constrain and enable certain interdependent actions. Thus, the more constrained an individual is in their decision-making, the less their actions reflect their values. In our flowchart of social structures, we can see that people involved, including both victims and people in power, consciously and unconsciously reinforce the social structure's existence. These structures then influence an innumerable amount of other structures, resulting in good and bad outcomes for those involved with the structure. In fact, social structures can positively and negatively impact victims simultaneously. For example, there are members of the Yanomami tribe who participate in illegal mining practices as a result of the pressure that has been placed on them by outside forces. Still, we cannot say that they are to blame for the harms the entire tribe is facing, as their decisions to participate likely do not reflect their ideals due to constrained decision-making. Social structures contain connected rules, representations, and relationships that shape behavior. For example, a decree by President Lula in January 2023 ordered the Air Force to close the airspace over Yanomami territory. This is a formal or legal rule, although rules can also be informal. At first, it was thought that this rule led to a 90% reduction in illegal flights by Garimpiros transporting goods. However, in a later statement, associations of federal workers in environmental and indigenous affairs accused the armed forces of not fulfilling their mission and failing to destroy mining machinery and airstrips. Rules, representations, and relationships influence the way people make decisions that have effects on other people. Along these same lines, it is important to note that social structures do not always create structural injustices. Then we must ask ourselves if the structure is morally impermissible or if there's an alternative structural arrangement that would decrease this current harms experienced and not harm another group to an equal or greater degree. Thus, we define structural injustice as an ethically unjustifiable harm against an individual or group that persistently reduces their dignity and/or essential combined capabilities. We acknowledge the limitations of our project as we can only discuss a small set of the total structures that harm the Yanomami.
The illegal entrance of garimpeiros is allowed by the Brazilian government, which is not upholding its constitution. The Constitution in Article 231 states that, quote, indigenous people as the first and natural owners of the land guarantees their right to land, end quote. For 4 years, from 2019 to 2022, Jair Bolsonaro served as president of Brazil. Bolsonaro allowed illegal miners to enter into the Yanomami region more easily by lowering surveillance in the Yanomami region and allowing gold prospecting in indigenous territories. Even though this economically benefits parts of Brazil, and some argue that remote and indigenous areas should support modern capitalist economies, this severely hurts people of the Yanomami region. Moreover, Starlink satellites operated by Elon Musk's SpaceX have aided the garimpeiros operations. These systems provide the miners with the ability to coordinate operations, warn one another of law enforcement raids, and make payments to major cities without having to leave the remote areas of the forest. Illegal miners have utilized satellites in the past, but the connection was unstable. This all changed with Elon Musk's visit with former President Bolsonaro, where he promoted his satellites. Now Brazil's new president, Lula, is set out to put an end to illegal mining in the Yanomami territory. Hugo Loss, an operations coordinator for Brazil's environmental agency, explains, quote, this technology is extremely fast and really improves the ability to manage an illegal mine. You can manage hundreds of mining sites without ever having to set foot in a mine, end quote. Thus, while modern and fast communication is important, it is worse than the negative impacts of mining felt by the Yanomami people as the miners have become more efficient in their operations.
This is an image of the Amazon rainforest in the Yanomami region. As you can see, major deforestation has occurred and there is stagnant water creating a breeding ground for mosquitoes that transmit malaria. Additionally, water runoff into the river is evident. Mining leaks mercury into the river, which causes health problems for the Yanomami people. The ecological and spiritual destruction of the Yanomami's home is a major violation of central combined capabilities that is caused by the continued presence of garimpeiros in the region.
The allotment of illegal miners into the Yanomami region leads many Yanomami women to have the tragic choice of exchanging sex for monetary benefits. A leader of the Yanomami tribe, Junior Hekarari Yanomami, reported that there was an 11-year-old girl married to a miner. He said that this isn't an isolated case and that many miners are married to indigenous teenagers. He said there are up to 12 children of miners in the Parima region, and there are more pregnant girls. Most of these women are refugees from across the border in Venezuela, fleeing the economic crisis there. This is a relationship aspect of social structures that generates a tragic choice that women must make to sustain themselves and feed their children. In Yanomami culture, it is common practice for women to be abused by their husbands as a symbol of loyalty. In addition, the Yanomami people are often represented as violent in Western media, contributing to the white people's sense that Yanomami are normalized to sexual abuse. This is a faulty representation as the women feel they are taken advantage of by the miners, and since this is an outside source, they're uncomfortable with this abuse. This misrepresentation is evident in the titles of books and articles on the Yanomami, such as Yanomami, an area of conflict and aggression in the Amazon, and Savages, the life and killing of the Yanomami. This negatively shapes people's perspectives on the Yanomami, and they may use their biases to justify the other harms committed against the tribe, such as deforestation, water contamination, land invasion, etc.
Before the garimpeiros entered Yanomami territory, the Yanomami were experiencing minor issues with malaria, but since the settlement on Yanomami land, cases of malaria have increased by over 1,000% between 2018 and 2020, and 92% of Yanomami individuals have higher than safe levels of mercury in their blood. As mentioned, mining caused stagnant pools of water, creating breeding grounds for mosquitoes and leading to an increase in the spread of malaria. As a result of mining, heavy metallic waste is dumped into rivers, contaminating both the water supply and the fish that the Yanomami. This issue is perpetuated by the limited healthcare structures that exist in the Yanomami territory. Though the Yanomami have traditional medicine, Western technology that can directly treat and mitigate effects of malaria and mercury poisoning, as well as stop its spread, has only recently been introduced to the area. A Doctors Without Borders initiative exists to test and treat Yanomami people, and on February 24th, 2024, a hospital accessible to the Yanomami was opened in an effort to treat Native populations. Looking forward, this could be a good initiative to help ameliorate the negative health effects that the Yanomami are experiencing, but it does not address the root of the issue, which seems to be related to the way in which the presence of the Garimpiros has reshaped the Yanomami's relationship with their land, which is their most valuable asset and their spiritual reason for existence.
We are focusing on social structures because just looking at the individual, we may not be able to understand the full scope of why the individual is in the situation they're in. Social structures contribute to the persistence of harms, and it is important to identify the social structure to be able to find solutions. Looking at these issues through the approach of social structures allows us to address the issues at the source of the issues.
This state of emergency cannot solve the problem. We need something permanent for all communities. Although a state of emergency has already been declared in Brazil as a result of the unjust actions of the Garimpeiros, current responses may be problematic and falling short of justice. Morally permissible responses are important to avoid futile responses, avoid jeopardizing current progress, or at the very worst, exacerbating the problem. Our proposed responses aim at promoting the sufficient fulfillment of the Yanomami people's central capabilities.
Former President Bolsonaro's administration failed to respond to the crisis in the Yanomami territory at least 7 times, and even worked with the miners to bring more money to Brazil's economy. In 2023, President Lula declared a public health emergency, initiating a military response. Military interventions are focused on destroying the miners' infrastructure, such as helicopters, airplanes, and fuel, rather than physically removing the miners from the region. The Brazilian army demobilized 335 mining camps and is currently providing humanitarian food aid, medical care, and in extreme cases, evacuation of the Yanomami. It is estimated that 80% of the miners fled upon announcement of military operation or were forced out. However, there remain many who continue to put up a strong fight against the government. These interventions have been hostile and are not focused on the securing of individual rights of the indigenous communities. Therefore, we argue that more focus should be placed on holding those responsible accountable, as it is not clear how the structure of the illegal gold trade operates. If and when this can be determined, these actors must be held accountable through the justice system. If miners and operators are not held accountable, other indigenous territories could suffer similar problems. The Yanomami's health has been severely threatened by the actions of Garimpiros, which has led to high rates of malaria and mercury poisoning. As the Garimpiros infringed on the Yanomami's right to bodily health, we believe that there is now a positive duty to introduce structures that will improve health outcomes for the Yanomami immediately, as well as in the years to come. As Bolsonaro's administration allowed the Garimpiros the ability to harm the Yanomami, this responsibility for repair falls on the government. There is already a hospital that has just opened in February of 2024 that is accessible to the Yanomami. We think this is beneficial to the overall health of the Yanomami by aiding in the prevention of malaria and in the treatment of already confirmed cases. Without treatment, malaria symptoms can last 2 to 24 weeks and even cause death. The government must also extend this responsibility for repair by addressing ecological harms. This is important for the health of the forest and also because of the immense spiritual and physical value that the natural aspects of the forest have for the Yanomami. Ecological remediation should include certain steps that will both replenish the forest by physically replanting new trees, and the government should take steps to decrease pollution, specifically from abandoned mines that run off and contaminate drinking water. Brazil's Agricultural Research Agency, Embrapa, has coordinated with the French government to start a program aimed at helping indigenous communities collect, germinate, and store seeds, and later build greenhouses to grow seedlings of local tree species and eventually plant them as well. Embrapa hopes to encourage villages across the Amazon to plant 1 million trees each year to recover degraded lands from illegal land grabbers. International actors could have a part in the remediation of the forest and in helping the Yanomami, but they cannot be held solely responsible for doing so. Ecological remediation will restore the forest as a major food source for the Yanomami and allow them to begin spiritual healing.
When examining the practical effectiveness of our proposed solutions, we can see that the Garimpeiros and their higher-ups are prosecuted for the harms they have done to the tribe, and if more laws are established and enforced to protect indigenous lands across the entire Amazon rainforest, then the Garimpeiros would be less likely to continue to invade other regions, threatening the dignity of the Yanomami and others. Efforts to remediate the harms that have already been done would then restore the dignity of the Yanomami and allow them to fulfill their central capabilities of bodily health, bodily integrity, sense imagination, thought, and connections with other species. Therefore, we do not believe it would be morally permissible or practically effective to allow the miners to remain in the Yanomami's territory or to essentially push them into another remote region, remembering that mining in indigenous lands is permitted by Article 231 of the Brazilian Constitution. If nothing is done to remove the remaining Garimpeiros, they will continue to profit from the exploitation of the Yanomami's land. If the Garimpeiros are removed and held accountable, they will lose their source of income, but the land of the Yanomami will be protected. The hurt the Yanomami experience from their land being taken away from them, which they use for practical and spiritual purposes, is greater than the hurt to Brazil's economy. People are not an aggregate, they are just individuals, and if you can only be one individual, would you rather experience economic hardship or have the entire foundation of your dignity stripped away from you? We think that it makes sense to make our proposed changes because they are centered around righting the wrongs that have been done to the Yanomami rather than merely protecting those that did the harm. We must also consider whether or not it is ethical to hold individual miners accountable, considering that they were just working for a larger, still unknown actor or company that was profiting from the illegal mining. However, the individual miners should certainly be held accountable for the negative individual actions if they sexually exploited the women of the tribe, for example. We believe these solutions are morally permissible because the alternative arrangement that removes the miners from the land and restores the Yanomami's spiritual connection to the land does not cause greater or equal harm to any individuals compared to the severe harms the Yanomami are currently experiencing. Essentially, a Garimpeiro could not reasonably argue that they are being violated to an equal or greater degree than the Yanomami currently are if they were not allowed to mine in the Yanomami's territory.
Paula Vargas, Amazon Watch's Brazil program director, says the Yanomami people and the forest they inhabit will take a generation to recover from Bolsonaro's genocidal agenda. While driving the miners out is critically important, there remains much to be done. It is not enough to stamp out this disastrous industry in one place. Rigorous investigation is required to uncover who is investing in and profiting from this horror. With the spiritual connection the Yanomami have to the forest, they feel like for their legacy on the land to live on and for future generations to be connected spiritually to the land and the people, the forest needs to be habitable and free from invasion by people who do not respect their capability for relationship with the forest. In order to ensure that the Yanomami will have a habitable forest for years to come, it's necessary to change the social structures at play, not just ameliorate the specific incident. Helping the Yanomami is important, but the same issue will occur again and again if action is not taken to change the structures that permitted the miners to take advantage of the Yanomami in the first place. Even though some people may not agree that spiritual relationships with the land are important, the relationship the Yanomami have with their land is crucial for them to live a fulfilling life. To the Yanomami, a life worth living requires the health of the forest and perpetuity.